Hey, my name is Salvador Garcia. I am 19 years old and currently majoring in Spanish and psychology here at UC Davis. And I am a child of a deported parent. And yeah, my dad was deported in June 2010, and I was about 8 years old. I used to live in San Bernardino, California with all his extended family and my extended family, or I mean, my mom's extended family. So it was a pretty big thing to be able to have to leave all that behind and move to Calexico, California, which was right by the border, to see my dad in Mexicali, Baja California, at the same time. And my mom made a pretty big sacrifice being having to leave all that behind to keep our family together. Of course, that hit us financially, having to move to two new places, having two houses, one on either side of the border. And yeah, you can't. My dad couldn't really help us because the salary in Mexico is vastly different than the one in the U.S. So, um, my mom had to do a lot of working, like overtime hours, to keep us afloat. My schedule, though, was very tiring as a kid. I mean, imagine being a third grader, having to wake up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to cross the border, make 2 hours wait time to get to school around 7, have breakfast, go to school. Then right after school, we went straight back to Mexicali, did our homework, and then have to do that all over again. We did that up until sixth grade, and it took me a while to adjust to that, of course. I had always longed for my dad to pick me up from school, like every other parent. My mom wouldn't even pick me up from school. Luckily, I lived right across the street, but I had to learn how to be independent without my parents. My siblings, of course, as well. They were older. Most of them were older than me. They lived farther. They both went to the high school. Um, and yeah, it was hard to be able to communicate with my dad. I didn't speak Spanish. He only spoke Spanish. He didn't speak English. I only spoke English. So there was that huge communication barrier. We understood the languages, we just couldn't speak them. Um, so it was a lot of back and forth with him, some major code switching to like pick up on stuff. And yeah, it was hard to make new friends because I never was able to hang out with anybody. Kept to myself, was really shy. Um, and so when I did make friends around middle school and high school, I would just talk about my mom. Uh, I learned that if I ever spoke about my dad, it would kind of look like he had died or something. It was like so drastic because I never was able to mention him. I was always like, oh yeah, when my dad was in the US, or like when my dad when I was younger. Um, but other than that, I couldn't speak about his current self because he was always working. And whenever I would visit Mexicali, I'd be really tired and go to sleep or do homework, and we would just talk. We really wouldn't go out. Didn't have money to be going on trips or anything to be able to speak about. Um, so I would just talk about my mom. I lived with her most of the time. She raised me. Of course, my dad raised me. Um, but it's different. It's different to have a parent in the U.S. and a parent in Mexicali. Um, he couldn't take me to the doctor if I was sick. He couldn't go to my award assemblies, and that reality slowly set in as I got closer to graduating. Um, he wouldn't be able to see me for my graduation. And I don't know how. I just realized that when I was going to high school, I knew that he wasn't going to be able to my whole life. It wasn't like he just was recently deported or that I didn't know he was going to be able to attend. I just never realized that. So as I got closer and closer to graduating, it was hard. Um, and yeah, so there's this one time though that I did mention my dad for, I think we had gone on one trip specifically, and like to the beach or something. And I mentioned them to my friends, and they're all like, "Wait, you have a dad?" And I had known this friend since like middle school, so it was like very odd. I didn't mean it in a bad manner to not mention my dad. I was not embarrassed of him. It was just hard. Um, and there's this one time I do remember though that opened my eyes to my scenario. It was my dad's birthday. My mom, um, planned a surprise birthday party for him. And so she invited all his like brothers and sisters, so my uncles and aunts, his son who he hadn't seen in 14 years, but for a different reason because he lived far. Um, and so they all came down to Mexicali, crossed the border, and saw him, and he obviously cried being able to see his family again. It was very emotional. But like something that had unlocked to me, like a new way of thinking, was that he would never be able to visit them, to see his relatives, like their kids, or like my cousins and their kids. They would have to come to him, and that led to me thinking about my future and about my family, and about how if I ever do have kids, I would have to go to him to be able to see him, and he would only get glimpses of their stages in life because uh, the U.S. is very demanding in time and education. I live 10 hours away from home to go, and so yeah, it's hard to accept that reality. But coming to Davis was definitely interesting. I talk about my dad now. I try and share my story. I say that being being raised in Calexico and Mexicali at the same time was very fun. I learned two cultures at once, but it was also very hard. And being a child of a deported parent is something that most people don't speak about and needs to be spoken about more often. So I hope with this, people are able to understand my story and maybe a new perspective that I had never seen before. And I hope that encourages other people to share their story. So thank you for listening. And yeah.